Okay, so let me actually move on to the documentation. So we are going to build Bookstore, same application using different web technologies. Bookstore 1, that's exercise 1. We are going to build it using servlets only. And Bookstore 2, we are going to use JSP pages. And Bookstore 3, we are going to use not only JSP pages but also custom tags. And Bookstore JNDI, here we are going to use JNDI, data source object. And Bookstore 5, we are going to use JSP along with JSTL in XML format. By the way, Bookstore number 4, it also actually shows how to use JSTL in native format. Okay, so let's try with exercise 0 is actually for setting up the database. So basically, you're going to start the Java DB and click services and right click, and you're going to start the server. And then you're going to open the file, and the file is provided as part of the hands-on lab. So you can just go to SQL scripts directory of this hands-on lab and then open it. And then you're just executing SQL command. Okay, so you can actually try this one at the command line if you want to, but from NetBeans IDE, you can just open it and then you can just click this guy, and it's going to perform all this SQL commands. So it's going to create books table, and then it's going to insert some data. Okay. All right. So once SQL commands is done, you should be able to see executed successfully message in the output window, and then you can just verify. Again, you can right-click books, and if you select view data, you should see the data that you just have added to this books table. Okay, so that's something that you have to do because we are actually using database table in this application. Okay, so exercise 1 is building Bookstore sample applications. Again, this one is using just a servlet. So let's just run that application. So Bookstore 1, so let's right click and run it. Okay, so here you are going to see Bookstore URL, and it's just displaying the Bookstore, and is going to so you know, you can just start shopping. So by the way, you can also actually see the number of visitor number is also get incremented. So let's try start shopping. Then you're going to see a list of the books. So that is actually this book catalog. Okay, and so I can select any of these books, and I can see the detailed information about the book. Okay, and I can add that book to the cart. So I'm actually adding that cart. Adding that book to the cart. So I have received the message that you have added from Oak to Java this book to your shopping cart. So you can click shopping cart right here, and you can see one book has been added. Okay, and I'm going to continue shopping, and let me try to see this book. And again, I'm going to add this book to the cart. So now if I see my cart, I should have 2 books. Okay, and of course I can remove one of those by clicking remove item. So let me just add another book here and add to the cart. So I should have now 2 books. Okay, now if I'm ready to purchase the book, I can check out. I can just click checkout, and then it showed me the total purchase amount. And then I can actually provide some name and credit card number and submit the information, and then it sent me it displayed a message for thanking me for purchasing books, and then I can just continue shopping. So very simple, the application. And so because I'm starting again, you know, it's actually giving you a visitor number of 4. Okay, all right, so that's the application. So when you run the application for the first time, it will actually go to the Bookstore. So I'm going to actually explain this application step by step. So when you run the application, let's see what gets displayed first. So in NetBeans, if you click properties and click run, it has what is called the relative URL. Okay, so it's like a welcome page. Okay, so when the application gets started, this bookstore URL will be actually set as a URL. So that's the reason it's actually going to the URL. Okay, so let me just run the application one more time, and you can see it goes to bookstore. All right. Goes to bookstore, so it will display this what we are reading, and then you can start the shopping. So let's actually see the code. So if I see the web.xml file first, so let's take a look at the web.xml file. So here, if I actually see the mapping of URL to the servlet, bookstore is this, right? Okay, so if you want to see the source code, let's actually see the source code. So bookstore is bookstore. The mapping is bookstore servlet. That's the servlet name. So we are going to see what is a class. Bookstore servlet. So this is the name of the class. This is the name of the class. The actual class is bookstore servlet. Okay. So let's go to that class. So we can actually go to the general, and we can see the servlet, and we can actually click this one to go to the source. Okay, so we are going to bookstore servlet. Okay, so this is the source code of that servlet. So it's basically a servlet code, and it's trying to get bookDB attribute from the context scope object. Okay, and it should have been set. Otherwise, it will actually return some exception. So this is set in the context listener. So let's actually take a look at the web.xml file one more time. Oops. Yes, so web.xml file. If you see XML here on the bottom, we have here you go, the listener. So this is the context listener, meaning this context listener will be invoked when application gets deployed and started the first time. So when we actually go to the context listener, so we go to listeners and the context listener Java. So this context listener is implementing servlet context listener, meaning this context listeners context initialized method of this context listener object will be invoked when the application gets started. So here what it does is that it creates a bookDB AO object, and then it's saving that object with an attribute called the bookDB. So that's the reason in the servlet we should be able to access this one right away. Okay, because this the attribute is created and saved as a context scope object during initialization. So if you take a look at the bookDB AO, and also other things we are actually doing as part of the initialization of this context object, context listener object, is also setting the counter attribute, hit counter and auto counter. Okay, all right, and we are saving it into context object as well. So these attributes should be able to be accessible in the application, in JSP page as well as in the source code, in Java code. Okay. So now if I actually go to, let's say, bookDB AO, let's see what it is. So that is on the database. So what it does, so this object gets created at the, when the application gets started, right? So basically it's setting the database connection, okay? And you got the database connection, and then for these are the methods that gets executed from the servlet, and so it's basically performing SQL operation. So you get the connection and you create the prepared state object, and then it just invoke the SQL. It's using JDBC here, and then once result is returned from the JDBC SQL call, it will just in this case get the book details, and it actually basically add each of those book in the books list object, and it will return list object. Okay. All right. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how this application works. So let's go back to the servlet. Okay. So the servlet code I was actually looking at was where was it? Yeah, servlet right here. Okay, so the one we are looking at was Bookstore servlet. Okay, so we just look into how this book DB attribute has been created. It was created as part of the context listener initialization method. Okay, all right. Now so that is actually time of the servlet initialization. So it creates the book DB object, and then when book store URL is called, then do get or do post will be invoked. In this case, it's a do get is because HTTP get. Okay, so in this case, we are going to get the session object, and then we are going to get the messages bundle. Okay, and so let me actually maximize the window. So we check we actually using the bundle messages bundle, so that this is actually so this is internationalized code. Okay, so we have a messages attribute saved in the session, and we also actually check the locale coming from the client. Okay, as part of the request. And then we're actually creating a response message. So we set the content type of response and set the buffer size. And then we are basically creating HTML page using println statement. And before we do that, we are actually adding a banner. So this is the way that we are adding a banner. So you create the request dispatch object and providing the page that you want to include. And here we are actually calling dispatcher include. So we are including the result of calling banner. Okay, so we are actually adding a banner, and then we are basically displaying a book detail of 2 or 3. So the book detail of 2 or 3 is this one. This is the wait a minute. Yeah, so this is actually book 2 or 3. Okay. And we also this one also actually using encode URL. So we learned the session tracking. We learned how to do URL rewriting when cookies disabled, right? So that's actually encode URL scheme right here. Okay, so this is an example of where we are actually using complete the servlet only to handle the request. Okay, so obviously this is not the most desirable of doing things, because we are actually creating the response page in println statement. So, but this is just for demo purpose, in case you just to show how to create a response message using servlet. Okay, so that is exercise 1. So moving forward. So basically, I just explain all this. Okay. All right. So moving forward, I'm gonna go to the next. Okay. So I'm gonna explain a few things. So filters. Yeah, this one also actually include filters. So we have hit counter filter, and then we have order counter filter. So the filter, so your filter has to implement filter interface, right? And then you can have a do filter method. You are going to override do filter method, and you do whatever you want to do. In this case, we are basically incrementing the counter, and then we are going to call do filter method to pass the request to the next one in the chain. Okay, and that is hit counter. So this, and we also have a order counter filter as well. So those filters should be declared in the web.xml file. Okay, so this we have 2 filters, order filter and the counter filter. So order filter will be receiving the request first, and the filter class is called the filters under order filter, and this one is hit filter, so that is under filters and hit counter filter, and the one is actually intercepting is this servlet. Okay, so receive servlet or bookstore servlet. So the only servlet that we are intercepting with these filters is a bookstore servlet and receipt servlet. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so for order filter is you want to actually increment the order only when this servlet is invoked. Okay, meaning when when the user finalize the sale, then that's where you want to we want to increment the order counter. That's the reason that we are intercepting only this servlet. Hit counter meaning how many users are actually hitting that the application. So let's this one. Hold a second. So this is bookstore. So we got 5, right? So if I want to open another browser, okay, and this representing another user, right? So in that case, it should actually increment to 6. So let me just get this guy, and if I try this one, should have 6. Okay, because this is considered as another user, and that the hit counter should be incremented. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's exercise 1. Okay, so we talk about the filter here, and you can actually think about other the servlets as well. Okay. Okay, now exercise 2. Now we are actually building the same application using just JSP. Okay, so let's run that application. Bookstore 2, and let's run the application. It should work exactly the same. Okay, so again, you can start the shopping, and you can add to a cart, and buy your books and submit, and so continue shopping, start shopping. Yeah, so it works exactly the same. Okay, so this time let's take a look at the code using the lab documentation, because we have highlighted code. So I'm gonna use, okay, so here we actually have a single servlet, because we are going to, so this is sort of the MVC pattern. So dispatcher servlet is playing the role of controller, and then JSP pages are playing the role of the view. So this is actually right approach compared to exercise 1, where you are using servlet only. Okay, so the dispatcher servlet is dispatcher class under dispatcher package, and so every URL, okay, every URL will use the same controller. Okay, so let's take a look at the dispatcher.java. This is the dispatcher class, again playing the role of controller. So we are going to retrieve the servlet path from the request object. So here what happens is, let me bookstore. This is bookstore 2, yeah. Okay, so this is just the bookstore and bookstore. Okay, so nothing actually after this. Okay, all right. So okay, so it's basically getting the path. Okay, so the path is basically the bookstore. Okay, so and then we are going to retrieve the shopping cart session object, session scope attribute. Okay, so this is the shopping cart that we probably have saved. Oh, actually, this is the if it is the first time that you're actually creating a shopping cart, and save it as the cart attribute in the session scope object. Okay, and then the book catalog, suppose is book catalog URL. So that is if this string is book catalog, and then basically we get the whether it's in fact adding or not. Okay, and if that's if there is nothing, that means we are yeah. So if it is not null, that means you are adding a book. So in that case, you are adding to a cart. Okay. Otherwise, yeah. So then we are actually just checking whether the string is book show cart or book receipt and things like that. And then we actually decide what JSP page will be used as the forwarded target. So we created JSP page based on selected screen. So bookstore. If it is a bookstore, then it's going to be bookstore.jsp, and then we are forwarding to that JSP page. Okay, so here this is an example where we are using just JSP page only with some dispatcher code. So now if I take a look at the JSP page, so this is the case where we, bookstore.jsp page that display the first page. So here we created bookdb using the Java beans. Okay, so remember that you can use the useBeans element to create an object of this bookdb. Okay, and save it into in this case page scope bookdb. And you're also setting the property of bookdb, the property database property of the bookdb will be set with this object. Okay, and for set property book ID property of the bookdb will be set with the 2 or 3, and then we are basically displaying a book details of the book as a default book is 2 or 3. And we are actually displaying the title, and we are also displaying some message from a message bundle. Okay, all right, and this is the book details. So it's pretty much the similar syntax. Okay, so that is using JSP page. Exercise 3 in this case is using JSP pages with a custom tag. So in this case, when you actually start the shopping, so let's run the application. So start shopping, and you can see we are using custom tags to display some discounted values, okay, of the books. So this is from the custom tags. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. So the custom tags in this case are under the tags directory. Okay, so we have a catalog tags and ship date tags, and so this is the catalog tags. Okay, and so here yeah, so this is actually basically how we actually displaying the discounted value. Okay, so this is something that we covered in the JSP 2.0 lab exercises. Okay, and for book catalogs, the book catalog is the one that we actually seeing right here. Okay, so book catalog. So in that case, so the actual the catalog prefix in this case is using SC. So we are using on the tags, and the name of the catalog is book catalog. Okay, I'm sorry, the name of the catalog in this case is catalog.tag. Okay, so basically we are just displaying those discounted value with the tags. Okay. All right. So that is the example. We are using the custom tags. Exercise 4 is usage of JNDI data source. So in our application 1, 2, 3, you probably here the way that we actually communicating with the database is sort of the hard-coded connection object. So let me actually show you. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so you're basically creating the connection object from a driver manager. So these are hard-coded the database configuration information. So we are using the samples database that comes with the NetBeans, and you're using Derby, okay? And so we got the connection object, and once you got the connection object, we are going to perform, SQL operation. So that's the way that we actually have a database connection for all the samples except the Bookstore JNDI. In this case, we are actually using data source object, okay? So in that case, what we have to do is you have to have this JNDI data source object defined in your server. In this case, the Glassfish. So let me show you. So we are using samples data source object. So let's actually see how that is actually defined as the JNDI resource object. So I'm going to actually go to admin console. And JDBC, and it's already defined for you, okay? So you don't have to actually define it. And here, JDBC sample. So this is one that is actually predefined, okay? So this is the data source that I can actually use right away in my application. If you want to have your own data source object, then you have to actually create one. For example, go to JDBC resource, and then you have to create one. So that's actually what I created, BookDB, but I'm not using it. I'm using this guy, okay, which is created as part of the Glassfish app server as a default, okay. All right, so again, if I run this exercise 4, it should actually work pretty much the same. Okay, so JNDI run. So here we are actually using JSTL, okay, so again, work the same. Continue catalog, add cart, see the cart, okay, clear cart. Okay, so it works exactly the same. Yeah, so we are using the JSTL. So last week we actually covered database, the JSTL, right? So here, we actually have a card object, and then we are using SQL, JSTL, so set data source. We are actually setting the data source to JDBC simple, and then basically we are using SQL JSTL tags for performing the SQL operation. So we are basically performing select statement, okay, and the result will be captured as a books var, okay, and then for books bar we are going to call row by index, and so each book will be set as the book row, and then we are just displaying the values, the property values of each book, okay. All right, so that is pretty much it. Okay. Exercise 5 is using JSTL in XML format, okay, instead of native format. So again, it works exactly the same. Let's run that application. And start shopping again. Yeah, works exactly the same. So let's okay. So here, yeah. So we are basically using JSP pages is going to use in this case XML tags and format and Xout. Yeah. So we are using XML based display page. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much it. Okay. Okay. Any questions?